Hi, I'm making this video for patrons to show how I'm layering the various media on my Frida painting. So as you can see on this painting, I drew this on with a Sharpie and then gessoed out over the top because there was background paint behind her, and I wanted to sort of give myself a white surface to work on since most of her face is going to be white. Then I went in and painted the hummingbird eyebrows with black gesso, and I took a pencil and drew in the lines from underneath for her face, doing some little corrections, like her eyes were lopsided and I corrected that, and her nose was a little bit off, and I think her lips are still sort of angled downward, so I'm going to try and correct that with some charcoal pencil, which is the layer that I'm working on today. So I'm going to use this first to get some shadow in her lip, but also to maybe correct these design lines just a little bit and angle her lips back upward. And I'm using charcoal pencil. Some artists use washes to do this. I'm not quite confident enough with my wash ability yet to do that, so I still use charcoal. And since this is a mixed media work, I feel okay about that. So I'm adding some contours where her cheekbones would be. This is the underside of her cheekbone. That's kind of triangle shaped. And then there's always a little shadow underneath the bottom lip. I used to teach makeup for stage, and one of the first lessons I taught my students was how to shadow their own faces, and I had them do skeleton makeup, do skull makeup on their faces to show them where the shadows were. I still refer back to that when I'm working that lesson of where shadows are on your face and where highlights are. And very often when I'm doing work like this, I feel like my own cheekbones or where the hollows of my eyes are. Sometimes I go and look in the mirror to figure out where shadows are supposed to be. So, and from working from photographs of Frida, I also know that she has some circles under her eyes, some shadowing underneath here. And there's some shadowing on either side of the nose. And very often underneath the nose, and she has quite a pronounced depression underneath her nose. So this is basically just adding a line, a dark line of charcoal, and then blending it outward to create the shadows. I have to be careful. I stick my fist in the charcoal that's already on there, so periodically I stop and seal this. And there's almost always a shadow around the hairline. Okay, I think that's pretty good. The next step is to do a coat of sealer, and I'm going to use Aussie Mega Hairspray as a spray sealer. I don't really like commercial sealers. I've been using this since I was in school. I really like it. And I just use it as a spray sealer, spray a light coat on, and it acts as a workable fixative. I'm going to do that off camera because the spray gets on my camera lens and makes a big mess. So now that the sealer has dried, I'm going to do a little toning of her shadows. And I'm doing this with a blend of a little bit of purple acrylic, a little bit of black, a little bit of matte medium, and a little bit of water. And like with anything else on this piece, it's better to build up layers than it is to try to do it all at once. So I'm trying to get just light amounts of color on and then feathering it out with water. And then I'll probably come back in with some white oil pastels to punch up the highlights a little bit. And the trick to doing this is to get the color on there without letting it run. So you have to work kind of quickly. Oops. You don't want to do that. Too much water. And the other reason I don't want to add too much water is because it breaks down the binder in the acrylic. Now I'm going to do a little work with some white water-soluble oil pastel. And I'm doing it with this because it's easier to control and easy to blend. And I'm just hitting the places where there should be a highlight. So now I'm going to use a little bit of matte medium to sort of lock down all that pastel work that I did. And I'm just applying a tiny bit on this makeup sponge and then patting it on. And this will hold the white in place and keep it white while I work in other areas of the face. Although I do have to be careful not to, because the charcoal is lifting onto the sponge, I have to be careful not to get charcoal onto my white. So sometimes this takes a little bit of back and forth. Now I'm going to start working on the colors. And I try to work light to dark and farthest back forward. That doesn't always work out. So I'm doing a yellow ochre for the base of her eye color. Her eyes are actually brown, but I'm working with the highlight color first, and then I'll come back in and do shadows with brown after I get her pupil in place. And that gives her eye a little bit of reflectivity. I can't talk and paint at the same time. That's why when you listen to my videos I say so often, because I can't talk and paint at the same time. So I'm skipping the black circle that's going to go around her eye and moving out to this little bit of orange makeup. And I'm doing it in this order because the black will clean up any ragged edges that I have. So I can come back in and repaint the hummingbird if I need to clean up that edge. Although this outer edge is much easier to paint than the inner one. So, and I'm trying to paint very lightly so that the shadows that I put in with the charcoal pencil show through. But I'm also going to come back in and bump those shadows up a little bit once this layer is all done. Oh, and I should probably say that I also should be working right to left because I'm right-handed, and that would keep me from sticking my fist in the paint that I've already done, but very often I miss that part and I end up working on the right side of the face first and then jumping back to the left side. I try to remember not to stick my fist in what I've already painted, but I have a hard time with that. So my plan for this is to do orange in this big circle here, and then black around her eye, and then I think I'm going to do some dots along the edge of this in a bright yellow, just to bring some more festive color into her face. Keep her from being so bleak. And the call for art for the show that I'm doing this for asked specifically in their call that even though Day of the Dead, some Day of the Dead art can be very somber, because it is a day that's about remembering those who have left us, that we emphasize the celebratory nature of the holiday rather than the more somber. So I'm doing my best to keep her festive rather than too serious. Okay, that looks good. So this is all about painting a little and then letting it dry, and then painting a little more and letting that dry. So I think I'm up to the part where I need to let this dry. So now I'm going to do the area around her eye, and I'm going to start with gray. And I'm doing gray because I want there to be highlights in this black. I don't want it to just be flat black. I'm also going to do the first layer on her lips. This kind of orangey red. I think her lips are still crooked. That's bothering me. I thought I fixed it, but I think I didn't. I think this side is still too low. So now I'm working with a really tiny brush and some white to to do the whites of her eyes and also a line right along the top and the bottom of her eye socket. I'm doing this because I'm going to do eyelashes, and this black makeup wouldn't extend all the way beyond the eyelashes. There would be a little strip of bare skin where the eyelashes are. So I'm just doing a little bit of white. And also, when I was drawing this, her eyes were very wide. She was sort of startled looking. And I think I want her to be less startled and a little more pensive. So this closes up her eye a little bit. And this sort of ditzy detail is only really necessary because this painting is so large. This isn't something that I would normally do on, say, a journal page. Here. So now it's time to let it dry. And you can see that I've been working on other areas of her head, the ribbons in her hair, and now I'm sort of roughing in the color for her hair too. So while things are drying, I'm sort of working on other portions of the painting. So now I'm just taking a tiny bit of the color I used for my wash, and I'm knocking down this white just a little bit. It's easier to do it this way than it is to try and blend an opaque color. Now I'm going to do the centers of the eye, and I usually use a stamping tool of some sort. This time it's going to be a dowel. And I'm just stamping on my palette to make sure that it's the size I want. And sometimes it's a little small. I use the tool to make a larger dot, like that. Oops, that might be a little bit too large. So I'm just cleaning this up with a little bit of water. And the dots look pretty even. So I'm working on her eyes with some Sharpies, and I already outlined, but now I'm just drawing in some lines to break up the solid color, and also to make the eyes a little darker. Ended up with a little less highlight than I would have liked, so I can just go in and add a little bit with some acrylic. Now I'm going to add some highlight. Here. Much better. Now she looks a little less startled than she did. I'm going to work on the black areas of her face. First I'm going to lay in some shadow. And then I'm going to bump this up with some glazes until it starts to look like it's black all over. Oops. I'm just sort of pulling the color off in some places with a little bit of water and then blending it down so that it's not quite so harsh. So I don't want this to be all solid black. It's not really what makeup looks like when it's on a face. I'm using a marker to add some eyeliner. Neither of those pens was dense enough for me, so I'm going to try doing this with a brush. That's a little better. And while I have this out, I'm also going to do some eyelashes. So now I'm going to do some black dots around this part. And then when these dry, I can come back and do some yellow dots in the center. While those dots are drying, I'm not real happy with the amount of highlight I left behind when I did her lips. So I'm going to add some in. That's a little bit better. Oops. Yeah, don't stick your hand in the dots. I do that a lot. There, I think those lips are a little better. So now I'm going to walk away and let those dots dry before I do any more damage. So now that the dots are dry, I'm going to add yellow ones, and I'm aiming for something slightly smaller than the black. So that it looks like there's a little outline around them. So now I'm mixing up a little black with some matte medium to do a little more makeup around her mouth. I'm trying to do this so that it's a little bit pale. I usually do these lines in black, but I don't want them to be so obvious on her. So now I'm sort of rounding them out rather than just doing straight lines. So they look a little bit more like teeth.